Malaysia, which is located strategically in Southeast Asia, has been facilitating as an economic hub over the years. Gradually, it has attracted more foreign investors and entrepreneurs to build their businesses in the country. While the nation remains an attractive investment destination, a lot of foreign investors are also moving to neighbouring countries in the region. Now, how to improve the investment process in Malaysia to better drive economic growth? I'm Muhammed Ahmad Hamdan, and this is Money Matters. Hello and good evening. We have two guests joining us in this episode. The Executive Director of the Malaysian Employers Federation, MEF, Datuk Shamsuddin Bardan, and Bank Muamalat's Head of Economics, Market Analysis and Social Finance, Dr. Muhammed Afzanizam Abdul Rashid. Welcome to the program, to the both of you.
Thank you very much, Muhammad.
Awesome. Now, Datuk, I want to start with you. Malaysia was, the Prime Minister recently says that Malaysia has the capacity to be great again in terms of attracting foreign investors. Now, let's talk about ease of doing business in the country. Where does Malaysia stand right now?
Basically, of course, the monitoring on the ease of doing business had stopped in 2020. The last report that we have was for the 2018-2019, and we did score very well there.
We did.
In fact, we are at the 8th position out of all participating countries. And basically, as far as infrastructure is concerned, we scored very, very well. For example, in the...
This was by the World Bank, right?
Yes, yes, by the World Bank. And in terms of electricity supply, actually, we scored 100%. And of course, yes, we did great previously in terms of Malaysia's competitiveness in the World Competitiveness Index. We used to score within the, even top 10, went down to top 20. Then we went down to nearing the 20s kind of thing. But now we are at 32nd level, down from 25 from the previous year. And that is really a concern because basically people don't see us as that attractive anymore in terms of competitiveness.
Speaking of competitiveness, Dato', some of the concerns raised were, there's still a lot of paperwork, multiple procedures and approval stages. Do you think they're still, excessive or rigid or redundant?
I would say that, a lot of things had been done by Pemuda in terms of trying to actually make the business processes much better. And I would say, yes, they had done a lot of things to reduce all the unrequired paperwork. But still, I think a lot of challenges there, and especially when we try to coordinate between what happened at the federal level, what happened at the state level, and also at the local government level. And of course, to the investors, what really happened at the local level government is very, very critical because this is where most of the licenses are being processed there.
Dr. Afzanizam, why do you think that Malaysia, is still unable to resolve these long outstanding problems fast enough?
Sure, but perhaps I would like to echo what Datuk said about the state of our economy in respect to how do we gauge in terms of the level of competitiveness, ease of doing business. I think since pandemic, a lot of things have changed. Like Datuk said, the cost of living has gone up. Not just cost of living, but cost of business going up. And a lot of uncertainties that has been going around globally and even domestically. So naturally, I think businesses or even investors, they would become more risk-averse, they become more calculative in terms of their due diligence.
Right.
So in that sense, when they assess where to go in terms of putting their money and where to invest in terms of the FDI and whatnot, certainly it will go beyond just monetary terms, taxation. I think they would go beyond that. They would love something that is more that would improve their productivity in terms of the, how their businesses are being facilitated. And I recall
because they're not here just for the short term,
exactly.
Right? They're here for the long term.
You have to
so
think
looking at
them
stability
as a businessman,
and everything at a bigger picture.
Sure.
Datuk Shamsuddin, many agencies have been created and set up to look after the variety of businesses in many different sectors. Does Malaysia need so many agencies to regulate or create a good investment climate?
Yep. Thank you for that. And of course, I think we heard a lot about one-stop center, but it doesn't seem to really stop there. So many agencies were created to supposedly give more focus to certain issues. I would say that it is not wrong to create agencies. It's okay if they are really focused on the work they had done, and there need to be strong coordination on the kind of work done by these agencies.
Do we have strong coordination right now with all these many agencies? I
would say a lot of duplication,
okay,
which is not necessary and sometimes confusing to the businesses. And that, I think, is not giving the right picture for the would-be investors. Yeah? And I would say that it's better for us to really relook at all these agencies, whether we need to actually just say, let us create this one-stop center and let us make it work, really. Yeah?
Do you think it's doable?
Yes, I would say yes, it is doable. Okay. But of course, we need to have the willpower to do it. Yeah?
Right.
And of course, it's not just willpower, but political willpower, because it may need to have, reducing the number of chairmen, things like that, reducing the number of staff involved, things like that. Yeah?
Changes in policies. Right, Dr. Afzanizam, many multinationals operating in Malaysia are also moving out to neighboring countries like Indonesia, Thailand and Vietnam, where the overall production costs are set to be much lower than they are in Malaysia. Where and how did we go so wrong here?
Well, I think putting up the right narratives is critically important, I think. You mentioned about FDIs, which is, I think, more or less, we talk about real economy. But also, if you look at the portfolio investments, especially in equities, bonds, if you look at the share of foreign ownership in these two instruments, are dwindling, actually. So
it's not the real investment, but also portfolio investments are also dwindling.
Yeah. So foreign investors try to assess us, try to gauge where is the directions, what are the narratives that they want to put out in terms of selling Malaysia, in terms of doing business. So they are searching for that narratives. And so far, the indications from the financial markets seems not really forthcoming in that sense. We talk about, for instance, PE multiples. We are among the cheapest.
But price earnings, PE.
PE, yeah, true. Price to earnings ratio. My worry with that notion is that cheap could mean low quality. So I think we need to really take heed from these indications and putting up in terms of investment strategy, or rather how we can facilitate the investment process is very extremely important in terms of driving FDI to come to Malaysia.
Okay, that sounds very concerning. Now, we will also want to talk about foreign companies opening businesses in Malaysia. Last year, it was said that 360 applications were approved by Malaysia. in 2021. We're going to touch a little bit on that, but before that, we're going to go for a quick commercial break right now. So don't go away, because Money Matters will be right back. Right, thanks for staying with us on Money Matters. We have the Malaysian Employers Federation, MEF, and Bank Muamalat's Economist here in the studio with us today. Now, Dr. Afzam, a total of 360 applications from foreign companies to open businesses in Malaysia were approved in 2021, with the highest number of applications being in the food and beverage F&B sector. What's the element seen attractive to foreign companies in this particular sector, and also maybe in other sectors in general as well? What attracts foreign investors to open their businesses in Malaysia?
Well, I guess it will be very much dependent upon the extent of how we reopen our economy and the interlinkages our economy with this global demand that could actually play an important role. But I think beyond F&B, there are also other sectors doing well as well. You know, in terms of the E&E, you can see that the number of FDIs in this particular respect has been ongoing, and E&E has been around since 1970s in terms of FDIs.
Yeah, and it's also one of the biggest contributors to the country's economy.
I noticed universities like USM, they have a collaboration with companies like Micron, and they even have this mentoring kind of activities there and providing jobs to the graduates. So I think in terms of the key sectors and how FDI has played their role, I think there are good stories to tell, and I think it will be, such trend will continue because we know technologies will actually evolve, going forward. So it's just a matter of how Malaysia could actually bring up the value chain.
Datuk Shamsuddin, you've been around in the industry for quite a while. And what are the sectors, in your opinion, other than F&B and also E&E, that have the potential to attract foreign companies in the country?
No, there is now, I think, more like slow change as far as the kind of FDI coming to Malaysia. One of the latest report indicates that now the services sector is gaining traction. What I mean by services sector is basically those in cloud computing, those in even trading, e-trade, thing like that. And of course, out of all the latest total investment that they have coming into the country, 58% are coming from the services sector. And this, I think, is I would say, a welcome move in the sense that, Malaysia strives to be a developed nation. And most of the developed economies actually rely on services.
Are we still a manufacturing economy, or we're a services-based
economy? In fact,
economy?
services now is gaining a lot of importance because you talk about the GDP, it is more than 60%. Manufacturing is about close to 21-22%. I'm not saying that manufacturing is not important. It is still critical, but in terms of trying to move up the value chain, in fact, even it is also the country's policy to actually move towards more of the services industry. But the question is whether then we would have all the required, I would say, infrastructure and also the environment to actually attract more investors to come within the sector. Talking about whether we have the required skilled people, whether we have the required financing for this kind of thing. So all these things are interlinked.
Dr. Afzam, we spoke a lot of structural barriers in the country. What can the government do, in your opinion, to ensure that the stagnant global growth forecasted for this year does not affect Malaysia's economic recovery and also the public's welfare?
Well, I guess coordination is key. I remember in one of the papers written by Ben Negara's researchers back in 2017, the title of the paper is Rethinking Investment Incentives. They highlighted the number of investment promoting agencies in Malaysia is about 32. And there are more than 100 incentives governed by these 32 agencies. So just imagine and investors come into your country feeling confused, perhaps. So I think if you can address those issues, that would actually helps a lot, in terms of how we can facilitate the investment process. I think, like I said, competing using tax incentives, it has limitations. I mean, going forward, we might go into this global minimum tax going forward. So there's limitations in terms of tax competitions. But beyond that, what is it that we can offer? So perhaps by looking at coordination among the agencies, government agencies, state government, like just what Datuk said, is the step in the right direction, I would say.
Why are we lacking in coordination, Datuk Shamsuddin?
I would say that, Malaysia has many ministries.
Okay.
And of course, each ministry have their own agencies. And each of them has their, call it turf. This is my
Their
turf.
territories.
And territory, and you don't actually, step into my turf kind of thing. And I would say that perhaps, the lesser agencies, the less number of agencies that we have, maybe is towards the right direction. In the sense that then you don't really confuse the investors when they wanted to get incentive, where to go, things like that. I think there is a need to really simplify the whole process.
I agree.
Sometimes there is this need, or there is this, the government wanting to assist the investors, but for the investors to have access to that particular incentive is more like impossible kind of thing. So at the end of the day, investors say, there's so many things for me to do, then might as well I don't use this facility. I go to somewhere else kind of thing. So again, I would say here, coordination is critical to the whole thing. Let us simplify our processes. I think Pemuda had done a great job on this aspect in trying to streamline the regulations, things like that. Discard the old laws, discard the old rules, and come back with a new one, which is more actually meeting the needs of the current investors, things like that. And I would say that perhaps Pemuda also need to relook at all these things and see where we can coordinate better in trying to actually assist the investors.
Very spicy comments, I like that. But we're going to go for a quick commercial break right now, and don't go away because the discussion will continue just in a moment. Welcome back. In this episode, the Malaysian Employers Federation, MEF, and Bank Muamalat's economists are joining me today. Now, Dr. Shamsuddin, we talk a lot in Malaysia about foreign labourers in Malaysia. But is Malaysia attractive for foreign skilled workers or professionals?
I would say yes. When you talk about people in the expat category, that includes the people with skill, technical, knowledge, things like that. In fact, we have close to 100,000 of them in Malaysia. Yeah, and of course, in the event, of course, there's more FDI. Then, of course, these companies are allowed to bring in their technical people to fill up these requirements. But of course, yes, it is attractive for them to come to Malaysia. But of course, I would say that in the long term, we cannot really rely on foreign expertise, even if they are skilled people. We need to develop our own people to actually fill up these requirements of the industries. That is for long-term sustainability. I'm not saying that we cannot rely on foreign experts. Yes, we can rely, but not forever.
I actually have a different view on that, because I believe that talent is talent, regardless of where they're from. Because at the end of the day, this pool of talent is going to contribute to spurring the economy, the economic growth of the country. So
I would say to a extent, yes, you can have foreign talent. Of course, you look at the requirement for us to bring in foreign talent. First, of course, the requirement is to say whether you had tried your level best to recruit local expertise. If you can't, then only you go for foreign expertise. So in that sense, I would say that it's not automatic. In the event there are gaps to the requirement, then of course we can bring in the foreign expertise, and they can actually be actually invited to our place to fill up the gaps. But like I say, it's not going to be forever and kind of thing. And of course, it's always very risky for us to actually depend on foreign expertise all the time. And I think we need to build up our own expertise on this.
But the ASEAN Economic Committee, AEC, what they're trying to do essentially is to create a single economy in the ASEAN region, which allows freer movements, labor movements within the region. And that in itself says that talent does not matter. It's important regardless of the color of your passport. Yeah,
perhaps if I just make a quick comment on that. Yes, that is I would say...
Isn't that the direction that
the intention within the ASEAN Economic Community? But you have a lot of MRAs, mutual recognition agreement, at least 8 of them. But you ask around, how many people actually come under the MRA? Very few. And of course, you talk about freer movement of labor within ASEAN. Is that really happening?
Yeah, it's not.
No, it's not. So I would say on paper it looked very good, but in practice, if you want to say, for example, engage even not expat, just a foreign worker from our neighbouring country, you have to go through so many procedures.
Dr. Afzanizam, do you think in Malaysia we are foreign professional friendly? We are attractive enough to attract and also not just attract but also retain foreign professionals in the country to help build the economy? Because we're not there yet. Like Dr. Shamsuddin said, that we need to build our own talent. I agree. But we're not there yet, so we still, at a certain level, we still have to rely on foreign professionals. But are we, in Malaysia, are we doing that enough to attract and retain these foreign professionals in the country?
So obviously, I think there's a gap between what is written on the paper and what is being implemented.
Because we will definitely lag behind countries like Singapore, for example, and Thailand to a certain extent, I would say.
So on that note, I think we need to really look at how all these initiatives are being executed. And again, we talk about coordination more often than not now. But again, beyond that, I think another important issue that we need to consider also, because we are talking about building a capacity, and therefore it's about talking about, speaking about the technology transfers from these companies, from these expats. And so far, the numbers are not really encouraging. If you look at the balance of payment figures within the services sector, the IP, the intellectual properties, in terms of the deficit, is widening. So we pay more for foreign IPs. So it goes to show that we are so dependent on the foreign expertise in terms of how we can produce our goods and services. So another point to note is actually how we can make sure that whoever comes here in terms of these expatriates, the technology transfers can really happen that can actually eventually build the capacity of our workers.
Now, I wish we had more time, but it looks like that's it for this episode of Money Matters. Datuk Shamsuddin Bardan of the Malaysian Employees Federation, MEF, Dr. Muhammed Ahmad Abdul Rashid of Bank Muamalat, many thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate your insights and time on Money Matters.
Thank you for inviting.
All right. Now, for the past half an hour, you've been with us on Money Matters. Do join us again, same time, same day, next week for more money insights that matter. I'm Muhammed Ahmad Hamdan. Have a great weekend ahead.